Okay, welcome back to our channel here. My name's Matt,
I'm Cheryl.
and this is We're in the Rockies. And today we're doing a longer video that is about Yellowstone. Just we want to kind of give a big overview of how to travel to Yellowstone in some real practical terms and give some of our suggestions. Why don't you tell them why we wanted to do this?
Okay, so we created this channel because we have loved going to the national parks. Before we got married, both of our families took us to the national parks as kids, and then as we became adults and had our own family, we wanted to do these national parks trips. But it's kind of hard to get good information out there all in one place. You know, you go to a YouTube video, and normally there's great views of the park, but not a whole lot of information on like how to get there, how far apart things are. Just to kind of give you a plan and give you a good layout of how it works. And so we thought maybe we could share the information that we've learned and help other people plan a great trip and just good outings for other things in the Rockies. And we love living in the Rockies. It's really a special place, and we're glad we live here.
Yeah, so we hope to turn this really into eventually into an itinerary or kind of a travel guide. We want to do an audio tour as well, so we want to do some things that'll help people really enjoy some of the places that we love a lot, and we want to provide some really good resources for you to plan your trip to these areas. So we're starting with Yellowstone, and we'll move on to some other places down the road.
But we're going to have lots of other videos of Yellowstone and other places as well. So subscribe so you can stay current on what we have going on.
So both of us are actually teachers. My wife teaches special education, and I teach at the university at night. I work a day job, but then at night I teach a history class at our local university. So we we like teaching, we like traveling, and so that's a little bit about us. Oh, we have 4 children too, and so when we travel, we're typically looking for family-friendly things to do as well. Okay, why don't we get started? The first thing is that we want to talk about is when to travel to Yellowstone.
All right, so Yellowstone is mostly okay. The park of Yellowstone is open year round. However, there is crazy amounts of snow in the winter, and it takes a long time for it to melt. So their tourist season is relatively short. You know, if you look online to start getting reservations for things, the big tourist season for Yellowstone is June through August. June's when a lot of the campsites open up, a lot of the lodges in the park open up. Some of the outside things are open, like hotels, other campgrounds, things like that. But we think that the best time to go is September. If you have the luxury of traveling anytime, if you're not working with school schedules, go in September. There are way less people there. And if you get towards the end of September and you head up towards the Mammoth area, you can see some real action with the elk.
Yeah, the elk are in the rut at that time, which means it's mating season, and so the big bull elks are kind of competing um, for supremacy there, and so they get real wound up and they start chasing cars and uh, anything that's nearby. So there's a lot of volunteers there and rangers that are trying to keep people safe and keep them at a distance. So the elk put on quite a show in the fall. So yeah, definitely September. Plus the days are the weather is perfect typically in September. Kind of cool at nights, but perfect during the day. Throughout the summer, the temperatures are usually in the 60s, 70s. Sometimes it gets up to the 80s during the day. At night, it's still in the 30s, even in the summer. Fall is going to be a little colder at night and a little chillier during the day, but really generally perfect temperatures.
I was going to say, if you do have to go in the summer, we went in July this year, and there were beautiful wildflowers. So, I mean, Yellowstone's just cool anytime, but yeah, if you want to avoid the crowd, September. But if you end up going in the summer because of schedules, at least you'll get to see some pretty wildflowers.
Okay, so next thing is how long to stay there, and uh, we would recommend at least 2 days. In Yellowstone, Yellowstone Park is laid out like a figure eight. Really, there's 2 loops to do, and so if you stayed there 2 days, which a lot of people do, they'll do a loop each day, and they'll just kind of skim the highlights from each loop. Although I would recommend 4 days because the loops are a lot of driving, and it takes you about 2.5 hours to drive around the one loop. So just one loop takes you around 2.5 hours to drive. And so if you can actually split that up into 2 days and kind of plan it out to where you could do like a half a loop a day, or spend some time in a particular part of the park, or even get out to some of the valleys out on the eastern side, which we'll cover here in a minute, that would be ideal. 4 days. I mean, you're never going to see everything at Yellowstone. Never. I mean, we've been going there for, I've been going there since the 1980s. And so,
Well,
both of us.
I actually looked up how big the park was, and it is bigger than Delaware and Rhode Island combined, and it's almost 7 times as big as the Great Smokies. Just to give you an idea of how massive this park is. It is humongous, and there's so much to see. Just like Matt was saying, you can go there every year your entire life and still see something new.
Yeah, so I guess our recommendation is 2 to 4 days. I mean, if you're a beginner, I mean, if you've never been there before and you have the time, 4 days I think would give you a really good feel for Yellowstone, and you could really be sightseeing from first thing in the morning all the way till late in the evening. You can spend the entire day in the park. So.
Well, and Matt said that like 2.5 hours to do a loop. That's 2.5 hours if all you did was drive.
Yeah.
Which you're not going to just drive. You're going to get out and see all sorts of things. And honestly, like when you go to Yellowstone, if you're trying to hit the park in 2 days or 4 days, like bring your A game. You're going to be tired. It's a pretty intense trip because there is so much to see. That be prepared. Wear some good shoes and maybe your kickstarts, whatever you need to keep you going.
Yeah, it does. It takes a while to drive around. You'll get in traffic jams. You'll just kind of takes you a while to get moving from place to place a lot of times. So, and there's a lot of walking and a lot of driving. So just kind of be prepared for that. Okay, well, first of all, let's talk about how to get there. Typically, you'll do a lot of driving to get to Yellowstone.
Oh, and it's good to mention that Yellowstone is a trip that you will need a car.
Yeah.
There's not a shuttle system. I mean, this is 2020, so we're in the COVID season, so there's really not tour buses going around the park right now, but you're going to need some sort of automobile transportation because the park is so big.
Yeah, and usually you're either going to be driving a long distance from, I think probably a lot of people fly into Salt Lake City, Utah, and then drive about 4 hours to get to West Yellowstone that way. I've talked to plenty of other people online who've seemed to they've driven there from other places, like the Midwest or something like that. But no matter how you slice it, it's going to be a long drive. You could maybe fly into Jackson Hole, Wyoming. That would only be about a 2-hour drive to the park if you did that. Or if you flew into like West Yellowstone or Gardner, Montana, these are tiny little towns, you could do that too, but I think it would cost you quite a bit of money. I think the vast majority of people are driving from the Salt Lake area or Las Vegas area, maybe Seattle, but these are long drives to get there.
All right, so where to stay? We actually have a whole other video on this, so we're not going to get into great detail on this, but we have a video on where to stay camping and where to stay like hotel resort wise. But on this video we wanted to tell you our top picks where we choose to stay when we go there. So the first one we wanted to tell you about was hotels. Now generally we don't stay in a hotel, but if you sometimes our trips to Yellowstone are last minute, and hotels are usually the best bet if you're going last minute. The campsites get reserved really fast, and lodging inside the parks gets reserved really fast. So if you're gonna stay in a hotel, and we are from the west, so we're always going in through the west gate because that's just the closest one to our house. We love the Days Inn in West Yellowstone, and the reason we love that hotel is, like we said, we are parents of 4 children ages 7 through 14, and they have a pool with a water slide.
Yeah, so that's a really great break after a full day of driving and walking on the boardwalks. I mean, our kids, they're young, so they're not going to appreciate Yellowstone like adults are. So they're worn out. They're kind of tired of the driving and the walking. So having a pool is huge for the kids.
Plus, they have family suites, which are great, and they give you coupons for the restaurant next door. They'll give you like 2 per room or something like that, and you have to buy the other ones. But the breakfast was reasonably priced for the ones we had to buy, and the kids loved getting to pick out their meals. I think that when you're traveling with children, just a little side note is sometimes the things that you think your kids are going to love might not be the things that they really do. I know for our kids, they love the breakfast, they love the pool, and they love cartoons on cable TV.
Yeah.
So that's where we like to stay in West Yellowstone if we're staying in a hotel, and it runs between 100 and 200 a night. Average park prices like for hotels is between 150 and 300 a night during that peak season. It can get kind of pricey, so plan on that.
So just in general, and again, we'll have another video on this, but just in general, you could stay in the park. There's a company called Yellowstone National Park Lodges.com that handles all the places to stay within the park. These are lodges like the Old Faithful Inn, the Old Faithful Lodge. There's cabins that you can rent and things. Outside of the park, the main places, the biggest place is West Yellowstone by far. That is a city that is located right next to the park opening on the west side. On the north side, Gardner, Montana is probably the next most common place to stay. And that is again located pretty close to the border on the north side near Mammoth Hot Springs. And then on the east side, some people stay at Cody, Wyoming. That's a real popular western town, a really cool town, but it is a bit of a drive to the park. Like just to get from Cody, Wyoming, just to get to Old Faithful is about 2.5 hours. So that's less common for people to stay there, but I know of people who just love Cody, Wyoming, and who do stay there sometimes. And then on the south side of the park, you have Jackson Hole, Wyoming, which again is quite far away. You wouldn't want to use that as a jumping off point to see Yellowstone. Probably a lot of people stay there and they do Grand Teton and all that, but I don't think you'd want to. It's about a 2-hour drive to get into the heart of the park from Jackson, Wyoming as well. So those are just an overview of the places around.
So like Cody and Jackson, those might be good places to see on the way into the park or on the way out if that's the direction you're going. They are both cool. Maybe we'll make some videos on those someday.
Yeah.
But yeah, but West Yellowstone and Mammoth, those are the big places. But West Yellowstone has most of the touristy things too. There's restaurants, hotels. That's the big touristy hub. So, okay. Now, if you are not able to get a campsite inside the park at Yellowstone, we recommend Rainbow Point Campground at Hebgen Lake. Hebgen Lake is, 15 minutes outside of the west gate?
Yeah, about 30. Yeah.
Well, depending
on which side you go to.
Yeah.
15 to 30 minutes, yeah.
But Rainbow Point is beautiful. The campsites are bigger than the campsites in the park. They're less expensive. You can get a regular site like for a tent for $20 or one with electric hookups for $28, which is kind of a rarity around Yellowstone, getting hookups. So if you have an RV and you like to be plugged in and use all your gadgets, that's a good choice. And it is right by Hebgen Lake. You know, when we stayed there, it was really cool. We could walk from our campsite down to the boat dock, and it was kids like throwing rocks in the lake, and just really, really a beautiful place. And they have more availability. You know, the park sites ones will get booked up really fast, but sometimes last minute you can get one of those parks outside of Yellowstone. The drawback is the extra driving time.
Yeah, we stayed at Rainbow Point once, and we were in a tent, and early in the morning we could hear some coyotes howling nearby. So you'll get visited by wildlife really at any of the campgrounds in the park or out of the park. That's a possibility, which is really cool. It was really quite a neat experience to be sitting there next to the coyotes howling. Now, if you stay in the park, if you get a campground in the park, there are 5 campgrounds that you can reserve ahead of time. And then there are 7 campgrounds that are first come, first serve. And those typically book up at around 6 or 7 in the morning. So, that is going to be pretty tough. We would definitely recommend getting a reservation at one of the big reserve campgrounds. Those 5 reserve campgrounds are all in the lower loop. But one of them is 2 of them are kind of in the middle between the loops in a way. So Madison Campground and Canyon Village Campground are probably the 2 we would recommend for seeing the park, because they're kind of in the middle of the 2 loops there. So if you're looking at a nice jump off point to be able to see both the upper part and the lower part, we would recommend those 2. If you wanted to see more of the upper loop or spend some time out in Lamar Valley, which is way up on the northeast side. Um, Again, there's some campgrounds up there that are first come first serve, but it'd be kind of tough to. It might be tough to get there early in the morning, but if you got there at 5 or 6 in the morning, you might get one of those select few spots and have a great time. So.
Yeah, and I just wanted to mention that, like with the lodges in Yellowstone, they have 2,300 rooms inside the park, with the company that Matt was just mentioning. But those really do fill up quickly. Price ranges are like the high hundreds, 200s, around there per night. They really are kind of. Yellowstone is kind of roughing it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the lodges, you might have to share a bathroom. Most of them don't have air conditioning or televisions, unless you go to Mammoth. They brag about their color TVs there, but but you are going to be kind of roughing it. But you will get like the legit in the park Yellowstone experience, and then they open up, booking for lodging a year in advance. So you can, if you are a planner and you're going to go, get online and book that up. As far as campgrounds go, those campsites that are for reserving open 6 months before the date. So, if you're wanting to go in June, start looking in December.
Yeah, they open up 6 months ahead of time, and real fanatics of the national parks, they know when they open up. And so, you probably want to be checking right when they're opening up. So.
And just one other words on like the campgrounds in Yellowstone. Those are also kind of roughing at campgrounds too. Like a lot of vault toilets. Like
no hookups.
Yeah, no hookups. Like, just be prepared. Be prepared to. It's not the KOA.
Nope.
All I'm gonna say.
Nope. Okay, let's move on to the next thing here, which is what to see in Yellowstone. So, why don't you start?
Okay, so Yellowstone, I would say, is probably most famous for its thermals. Okay, those are geysers, and there's actually 4 kinds of them. There's fumaroles, which is exactly what it sounds like. They are just stinky air coming out of the ground, and if you haven't experienced a fumarole or any geyser, be prepared. It smells like rotten eggs. One of our buddies said their kid wouldn't get out of the car because he hated how the park smelled at the geyser basin. So, just, I don't know. It's all good. We like the fumaroles. Then there are the springs, which are these beautiful pools. They come in different colors. They look like, I want to get in them and like hot tub it up, but don't do that.
Some people have tried and they've died.
Yes. There are mud pots, it's like bubbling mud. It's pretty cool. And then there's the famous geysers. And there's 11 geyser basins in Yellowstone, right?
Yep.
Okay, there's 11. And we have a video on that. But I want to say that my very favorite is the Old Faithful geyser basin. And I like this because it's huge. Huge. Big, long boardwalk. But you can actually see, there's like 3 or 4 pretty regular erupting geysers on that path. And you can go and, it's not just Old Faithful that erupts every hour and a half. You could go and see a couple of other geysers while you're there. Tell them about your...
Yeah, so Old Faithful does go off about every hour and a half, okay? So some people say an hour. It fluctuates a little bit over time, but about every hour and a half. So it's got this huge seating area that just surrounds the whole geyser pretty much. And you'll see people will start to gather as it gets closer, and it kind of puts on a show, and then people move on. But a lot of people just move on, and they drive away or off to the next thing. But we recommend staying in that area and going to see some other geysers. There's another geyser that's right there, fairly close, called Daisy Geyser, and it goes off every 2 hours. So, if sometimes people, the only geyser they see is Old Faithful erupt, but there's geysers all over the place. If you do a little planning, we'll provide some resources for you on that other video. Even you can check out. I've got some resources for you, but. The park makes predictions for 6 geysers in the park. In fact, I don't have my phone on me because we're shooting here. But they have an app. So if you download the Yellowstone app, you can click on the little link that says geysers, and it'll show the 6 geysers there. And they have prediction times for them when they're going to go off next. And give or take, depending on the geyser, it might be give or take 30 minutes or something like that. But 5 of those geysers are located in the Old Faithful area. This is called the Upper Geyser Basin. The Old Faithful area is, and it's the biggest of the areas. In fact, there's like 40% of the world's geysers just located in the Upper Geyser Basin. And so 5 of them are predictable, what we call predictable geysers. They make a prediction. Old Faithful and Daisy go off pretty regularly, and then there's 3 others that go off about once a day, maybe twice a day. So depending on the timing, you might be able to hit. Certainly, you could hit Old Faithful and Daisy while you're there, and you might be able to hit some more, see some more go off. One of them is called Riverside Geyser. It shoots into the river right there. So really cool, really pretty. A lot of people just don't even know about that, so they miss that part of it. And then there's one geyser that's in a different area of the park. So,
Yeah, and the rangers are funny. There's whiteboards in front of a lot of these predictable geysers, and they'll put when it's going off. And we were watching the Riverside Geyser, and the ranger goes over to the whiteboard, and it says like predicted time to go off now. Like he wrote now on it. It was pretty funny.
Soon to now. Yeah.
Soon to now. But the other thing about that Old Faithful Geyser Basin is there's a really pretty spring called Morning Glory. It's one of their most famous. And so, you're not just going to be seeing thermals and geysers there, but you'll see a really pretty spring. And there's a really nice geyser basin like across the street, the Black Sands one, which is not very traveled. There's not that many people there if you're trying to avoid crowds.
Yeah,
we thought that was very nice. It was really close, and we enjoyed it. We liked that one a lot.
So when it comes to kind of the thermal areas, the geysers and the springs and all that, really the 2 main things that you want to see are, you want to see Old Faithful. Look, I know it's common, and I've seen people online say, Old Faithful's not my favorite geyser, like they're kind of like geyser snobs or something. Old Faithful's very cool. I still like going to Old Faithful. Every time we go there, it's cool. The crowd gathers around. It shoots really high.
It's incredible.
It's not the highest, and it's not even the most regular, but it's the best combination of both. So you want to see, if you're going to Yellowstone, you want to see Old Faithful. The other main spring that you want to see is called the Grand Prismatic Spring. This is it just sits below Madison, so like a lot of the geyser areas are right there on the lower loop on the west side. We'll show a map here. But Grand Prismatic Spring is just a huge spring with these really colorful kind of rainbow colors on the outside of it that kind of splay out. And there's 2 places to see that from. You can park at the Grand Prismatic Spring parking lot and walk right out next to it and kind of see it. It just looks like a big pond, or a big pond that's steaming up and all that. And then if you drive down to the next spot, the next parking lot, you can park there, and then you can walk behind Grand Prismatic and walk up the hill and look at it from up above. And we recommend both. I mean, if you're going to Yellowstone, that is one of the things you need to see. And I have heard people say, they were walking on the boardwalk. They only saw it from the boardwalk right next to it, and they were like, whatever. And then I said, well, did you go up on the hill behind? They said, well, it was steaming, and there's no way you would have been able to see anything. That is not true. When you go up on the hill, even though it's steaming up and it seems like from right next to it you can't see anything, you can see it. It's really impressive, and we've got a picture of it here. So that is one of the highlights of Yellowstone.
All right, should we talk about animals?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, so that's another thing Yellowstone is really famous for, is the wildlife. And it's really cool because you have an opportunity to see bison, bear, elk, wolf, coyote, birds, lots of different things. And a lot of times you'll just see those things driving around the loops. My very favorite animal to see is a bison in Yellowstone, which is lucky for me because you don't even have to go looking for those. They are all over the place. Like literally, sometimes they'll cause traffic jams and you're just stuck and you're like, seriously, can you just cross the street?
You will. There's one animal you're guaranteed to see is the buffalo, and you'll likely get in a buffalo traffic jam when you go.
But they're so cool. They're so big.
And they're all over the park. You'll see it just about anywhere. They even hang out really close to the geyser areas. So you'll see them all over. You won't even need to try to see them. The next, maybe most common animal that you'll see are the elk. We already talked about them a little bit, but if you see a big, huge bull elk, you'll definitely want to stop and check it out. And again, if you're there in the fall, you want to go up near Mammoth and see the elk kind of go crazy and chase cars down and you know,
Well, and
put on
it's
a
funny,
show.
those elk, they're in the rut in September, but they're just around the town. Like Mammoth is like a little city. And
Yeah.
and those elk, you go to there's a park there, and you go there to like have your picnic, and those elk are like in your business.
They're just hanging out.
And there's
right with you.
rangers chasing them around with their flags, trying
Yeah.
to shoo them off, and
Yeah.
then they're getting mad at you, and you're like, but the elk approached me. Like,
So I learned this just today. That the rut, the rut is the mating season, but the rut comes from the Latin word roar, to roar.
Okay.
So these are where the males are really showing off and really getting testy. They're fighting with each other and all that. So anyway, the elk, very cool. Then of course, if you're going to Yellowstone, you want to see bears. There's no guarantee that you're going to see a bear. Sometimes we do, sometimes we don't. You're more likely to see a black bear. We've seen a mom with her cubs a few times. And then of course grizzlies are much more rare. They tend to hang out mostly out in Lamar Valley. So let's just talk about this real quick. The main places to see the wildlife are Hayden Valley, which is on the east side, on the lower part of the loop, near the lower loop. And then up north, like between Mammoth and Tower, is called the Northern Range. And they estimate half the wolves are hanging out in that park,
yeah, and I was reading
or in that area in the park.
there's only about 80 wolves in Yellowstone.
Uh-huh.
Like there's like 10 little packs of them, and they hang out together. But I mean, 80. So I think wolves are probably the rarest thing to see, and it's
Yeah.
hard to see a wolf.
Yeah, it's pretty tough. But you probably would need to see it up on the Northern Range. Again, about half of them are hanging out on the Northern Range. And then out in Lamar Valley, a lot of wolves. Lamar Valley has everything. It has grizzlies, wolves, elk. So we definitely recommend to try to get out to Lamar Valley if possible. You're more likely to see more wildlife there. Hayden Valley does have a lot of wildlife. They have like big bison herds hang out there. We have seen bears feeding on animals there. We've seen bears eating their dinner. If you're gonna try to see wildlife, the recommendation is to go at dusk or dawn. So that means that if in order to get out to Lamar Valley or Hayden Valley, it's way on the other side of the park if you're staying in West Yellowstone or even Mammoth. So it's out there ways, which means you got to get up really early to get out there, or you're gonna have to stay there, later at night.
So dress warm, and then bring your binoculars and a spotting scope. A lot of times there's a lot of activity out in these valleys, but it's hard to see it from the road, and you probably don't want to go hiking around through there. But
well, and the last time we went, so I've looked through a bunch of binoculars in my life, and they all seem to kind of stink, and they're just they're just not very good. The last time we went, I used this pair of Diamondback. I think it's called Vortex Diamondback, and they were amazing. I mean, it was a whole different world looking through these things and seeing some of those animals right up close. It felt like they were right there. So this is no joke. I would recommend buying some binoculars. Well, I'll put a link to that in the description to that pair, because that's the best pair I've ever used. I'm sure I'm no binocular expert. I'm sure there's other great ones out there, but wow, that made a difference. That made a huge difference.
okay, so we talked about animals. Let's talk about the Grand Canyon of the Yellowstone.
Okay, so at the canyon stop, I mean, yes, the Grand Canyon of the Yellowstone is really right there with Old Faithful and Grand Prismatic Spring, the three natural wonders that you need to see for sure. Now at that stop, there's actually an upper falls and a lower falls. There's two waterfalls right next to each other. The Yellowstone River flows through there and has carved these canyons, and you can stop at the upper falls and the lower falls. There are actually 3 places to stop on each side of the river. So there's like 6 places you can view these waterfalls from. the lower falls is what's called the Grand Canyon of the Yellowstone. This is the iconic view you're going to get. So she mentioned Artist Point is really kind of the best view to see the canyon and the falls all in one shot.
Yeah, and one little mention, if you have little ones, there is kind of like a fun little tree area that the kids like to play in. Our kids have always been hiding in those. It's like the trees kind of make little huts, and the kids like to run around and play there. And I think that's something I'm just going to throw in there. If you're traveling with small children, I'm talking like 2-year-olds, there's a lot of bawling going on. Like,
Yeah.
you know, you go on that trip for things that you want to see,
Yeah.
but just take stock that a 2-year-old is not going to find Yellowstone that interesting. You know, they're going to be interested in the goldfish you pack them to eat for their snack, things like that. You know, you have to watch them on the boardwalks. You know, we kind of joke when we went, because we've done Yellowstone with babies, like we've done it, and Matt's dad named the van the Ball-mobile because there was always a kid crying. And it's a lot funner to take them when they're older and they can appreciate it. I'm not saying you can't go with little kids and have fun, because you certainly can, and we have and did. But
I just wouldn't waste your time lecturing them about enjoying the scenery. Okay, they don't care about the scenery. They just some video games, some food. You know, try to do some fun things with them. So.
Well, even like seeing a wild animal, they're kind of like, well, I can see a closer view in the zoo. Like,
yeah, they don't appreciate it. It's gonna take them a long time to appreciate that. So.
But eventually they will, and you'll like it. So just keep that in mind. It might not be as magical for your 2-year-old as it is for you.
Okay, last thing is waterfalls. So a lot of people overlook these when it comes to Yellowstone, but there are about 9 waterfalls in the park that are really located right next to the loops, right next to the main road. Okay, some of them are literally just like a pull off into the parking lot and walk out there and see the waterfall, like Kepler Cascades is like that, Gibbon Falls. Some of these are just beautiful waterfalls, and they're like, what do we call it? High value. They're like high value sightseeing because, you know, low risk, high reward. You're just pulling off the side of the road, jumping out, and you can see these. I'm not suggesting you hurry your way through the park or anything like that, but you know, if you're driving from one place to the next, all you got to do is just pull off and see a couple of these.
It's like a 2-minute walk. Sometimes I think, God, here at home, we have to go up like a steep hill for a mile to go see a waterfall that's not even close to as nice as these are. So, I mean, take advantage of those short little waterfalls. Those are great places to take kids to, and a lot of these are handicap accessible. I've seen a lot of people on their motorized scooters around Yellowstone seeing the sights. There's a lot of pathways for people that need a little bit of assistance getting around, and so you can check that out before you go. But waterfalls are some pretty good places to go see those. But my favorite is the brink of the lower falls, like the top of it where it's yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, you walk right there where the waterfall's coming off, and there's always a rainbow there. So that's a cool area. That's right there by Grand Canyon. So what I was going to say is that I think some people might think, well, I don't have time to stop, you know, because there's so much driving. I got to get to the next thing to see, which is understandable. Which is why I would say, you know, make sure you're planning your trip out really well, and that you're not missing some of these real easy ones. Anyway, Fairy Falls is a very popular one. Although my insider tip here for Fairy Falls and for this Grand Prismatic Overlook is, if you could take a bicycle to Yellowstone, this will save you some time, and it's really pretty cool. That path that goes back behind Grand Prismatic Spring is a walking and a bicycling path. So you could ride your bike out there and just walk up the hill there to see the overlook and save you quite a bit of time. Or if you're going to go to Fairy Falls, you can go down just a little bit further. There's a little parking spot there with a bike rack. I saw a bunch of bikes parked there last time. So people bike half the way to Fairy Falls, and then they walk out the rest of the way to the falls. So that's a way to save some time. And really at Yellowstone, you do want to save some time if you can, because it's just a big park. So.
Okay, so we've talked about all the amazing things there are to see in the park, and now we want to talk to you about some of the things there are to do in the park. And I wanted to start by talking about water. There are over 600 lakes in Yellowstone, but the 2 big ones are Yellowstone Lake and Lewis Lake, and really Yellowstone Lake's kind of the star. you can, I mean, they're gigantic. Like when we went there, my daughter thought it was the ocean for a minute because it was so big. But you can actually rent a boat there and go drive around on the lake and see some beautiful scenery. But they have, but I do want to state though that first, you can only take motorized boats and watercrafts on Lewis and Yellowstone Lake. All the other ones, no motor, not okay. The other thing is these lakes are extremely cold. They are mountain lakes. I mean, you think that even on a warm day in Yellowstone, you're lucky to get up to 80. It doesn't stay that temperature for very long, and then it gets down to in the 30s at night. So, I mean, growing up, my family was like a boat and fishing family, and we never got in the water. And we'll get in the water everywhere, but it is incredibly cold. So, you know, you go there and get a boat, you're going to fish, you're going to sightsee, but you're not going to be swimming. But we'll talk about swimming in a minute. The other thing is fishing, okay? Yellowstone has some interesting rules on fishing. The first is that you don't need a state license to fish in Yellowstone, but you do need a Yellowstone fishing license. And I think, I don't know, you have to be you need one if you're over 16 years old. If you're over 16 years old, you need a license. And they have some pretty strict guidelines. Like, you know, Yellowstone's all about preserving, and so there's only 3 native fish that go in Yellowstone Lake. You're going to have to forgive me for reading these because I don't have fish names in my head. But I know the cutthroat trout is a native. There's a whitefish and there's graylings. Those are the 3 fish that they want in the lake. But there's been a lot of other species like rainbow trouts, lake trouts that have been brought into the lake. And so if you're fishing there, if you catch any of the native species, you have to throw them back. Doesn't matter their size, you have to throw them back. But if you catch one of the non-native species, you have to keep it. They won't allow barbed hooks because they want, you know, the fish to live if you release them back. But the fishing's fun. You know, as an adult, I haven't been fishing there too much, but as a kid we went, and it was a lot of fun.
By the way, Fishing Bridge, there's a bridge there called Fishing Bridge. They don't allow you to fish there anymore, but there's plenty of other places in the park that you can.
Oh yeah, and fly fishing is huge. You see people, like, it's real picturesque. There's a lot of rivers there too, and people are out there fly fishing, and the big risk with that is look for bears. They like the fishies too. Mm-hmm. So be careful with that. Okay, let's talk about swimming. There's actually 2 places you can swim inside Yellowstone Park. There is Firehole Canyon, and there is the Boiling River. Now, don't let these names fool you into thinking it's like a hot tub.
Well, the Firehole. Okay, so Firehole River, it has that name because one of the geysers empties into there, so it is a warmer, well, relatively warm river. It's not freezing cold.
It's warm enough to get in.
Yeah.
I would not consider it warm.
Yeah, no, but it's not freezing cold like the other ones. So that one, there is a little swimming area there that's right next to Firehole Falls, and although I've heard that's maybe sometimes not the safest place.
Well, and from what I was reading about it was that it opens sometimes. There are some years when the river's really high that it's too dangerous for people to swim in it. And I I don't particularly think it's a very safe river. There are a lot of undertows, and it can be pretty fast running. But Boiling River is a slam dunk. We love Boiling River.
The Boiling River is a river up near Mammoth that empties into the Gardner River. And what's really cool about this is the Boiling River is actually boiling. It is coming from a geyser of some sort, and it is actually, if you put your hand in there, you would burn. But what it does is it empties down into the Gardner River, which is a cold river. And so people have kind of built these little walls in a way, not walls, but kind of like little sitting areas,
little dam up areas, kind of.
Yeah, and then they just go and hang there. You're not really swimming. You're just kind of almost like it's like a hot pot, really.
It's shallow.
It's shallow. You're just sitting there in the water. But what's cool about it is it really is like a hot tub, but then it's got these cold currents from the Gardner River. So I like it because it's kind of hot and cold. And it's about less than a mile walk out from the road. So you do have to do a little hike to get there, a little walk, but
it's flat
walk, but really popular place to go. There'll be a lot of people in there. A lot of times.
There's only about 40 parking places there. It's open from 6 in the morning until 8 at night, and the best times to go would be like 6 in the morning to 9 o'clock. However, it's cold at that time, or 7 until 8. Those are the least traffic times. But this is like kind of I think it's been a secret for a while that people are catching on to the secret.
It's kind of cool because if it's a hot day, if you're really hot, you just kind of move over into the colder currents, and if you're really kind of wanting the hot tub feel, you just move over into the warmer currents.
And
Cooler.
It's just a nice break from being out and sightseeing. You're getting just to enjoy. And so yeah, it's up in the Mammoth area, so the northern part. And one other thing to be aware of, both at Firehole and at Boiling River, is places to change clothes. There's not many places to change clothes. There's like 2 bathrooms at Firehole and like 1 at Boiling River. So I don't know, get creative, put your swimming suit on earlier, or hold up a sheet and change. Yeah. I can recall one time, I think, waiting outside that bathroom for like half an hour for one person to go out. So just, be prepared. Sometimes these national parks, they're getting so much more popular, and they can't really grow because they're a fixed thing. I guess they could put more bathrooms in, but they're going through some growing pains, and so sometimes the facilities aren't exactly adequate for the crowds.
Plus they have no money. Okay, so the next thing is biking. We had never really thought about this until our last trip there this year, but we took our bikes and had a great time. I've already mentioned the trail behind Grand Prismatic, which actually connects up to a higher place in the park. But anyway, there's a path there, and then right around Old Faithful, there's a blacktop road that leads out to some of the farther geysers in that Old Faithful area. So the Old Faithful area is about 1.3 miles long, from Old Faithful to the last geyser, to the last area there. So having a bike at that area would be really cool. It would be really useful to getting around to seeing more of those geysers. Like you can bike all the way down. I saw plenty of people when we were at Riverside Geyser sitting there waiting for it to go off. Right before it went off, a couple people pulled up on their bikes. You could tell these were, they knew the schedule, these people, and they just hopped out and took their bikes down there and saved a ton of walking time.
Oh, and 2 things we need to mention. Wi-Fi. There is not good Wi-Fi in the park. So if you're wanting to use the app,
there's cell reception.
Yes, that's what I'm talking about.
There's cell reception pretty much anywhere in the park.
So like for the Geyser app, like if you're coming through West Yellowstone, like seriously, pull over to the side of the road and look at your app, because that's when you're going to be able to look at it. Like at least we didn't have cell service in the park. The other thing is, with the bikes, you can rent them in Yellowstone at the Old Faithful Snow Lodge, which is right by there. So, I think you can rent a bike for $10 an hour, or, half a day or a full day. But, if you don't have a way to get your bike there, just rent one for an hour and go over that morning glory and the geyser and then head on back.
So two more things on that. There's another geyser that's pretty close to Old Faithful that's its own stop. You have to drive down the road a little ways and then pull off. It's right next to Kepler Cascade, so there's a little parking lot there for a waterfall, and then that's the same parking lot to head out to see this geyser called Lone Star Geyser. It goes off every 3 hours, and it goes off for like 30 minutes, so you actually have an okay chance to see it if you get out there. But that trail is about 5 miles out and back, but it's a hiking and a biking trail. So again, if you take your bike, you can save a lot of time getting out there and back. And then as far as the app goes, definitely check it before you go into the park. When you have internet connection, check the geyser times. If you're wanting to, if that's the day you're going to see geysers and you want to see some, you can plan out your day by checking that app. But a lot of times on there it'll say TBD, to be determined, because if they've fairly recently gone off, they don't really have an accurate prediction until they kind of figure out how much water discharge and stuff. So in that case, you might have to just get to the Old Faithful area at some point, and they'll have a chart, a picture, a list of the times that they're expected to go off. So that's about your only option, because once you get into the park, you're not going to be able to get the internet connection.
Yeah, just a couple more things to do, and this is 2020 COVID year. We love to get an ice cream cone, either like at Tower or at Old Faithful, and eat it while we watch. It's pretty fun tradition we've had. And then the other one is doing the Junior Ranger program. Junior Ranger program, the visitor centers are closed right now, so you can't go in and get your normal brochure, but you can print it off online, and the Junior Ranger program is actually fun for everyone, not just for kids. Matt's mom wants a Grandma Ranger program.
Yeah.
She does.
My kids say she's a senior ranger.
Yeah, and she does it. She does it right along with the kids. It's real fun. They get a little badge at the end of it, and so those are our things to do in the park that we recommend.
I got one more.
Oh, okay.
I haven't done this, but this is what I'm going to do next time I go there. Up at Tower, they have an Old West cookout. So Tower is called Tower/Roosevelt, and this is a place that Teddy Roosevelt liked to stay when he visited the area. And so they have some buildings there called the Roosevelt Lodges, and they have an Old West cookout. You can eat inside the lodge, or you can take a carriage ride or even a horseback ride out into the woods, and they have an area set up there where they feed you dinner, and it's an Old West cookout, and the cowboys sing songs. I haven't done this yet, but it is definitely on my bucket list. So there's a huge variety of things that you can do at Yellowstone, just so many things that people don't even think of. So there you go.
All right, so hang in there with us. I hope this is helpful. We've
Yes.
got a few more things to tell you about. Like, really, I hope that this is helping you plan your trip and that you're getting some ideas of things you want to do. So,
If you're getting any value out of this, please subscribe.
or throw some comments in if you have a fave that we didn't mention. So,
For sure.
Okay, so things to do outside of the park. Yellowstone is beautiful and amazing inside, but there's a lot of touristy things you can do that are a good break. Like we mentioned before, driving the loops and seeing all the sights can be a bit grueling. And so
it's beautiful and amazing outside the park too. The whole
It is.
area is just part of this huge, they call it the Greater Yellowstone ecosystem. It's just its own amazing ecosystem.
So we have a video coming out of things to do outside of the park, but on this video we're going to tell you our favorite things to do outside of the park. Okay, so these are the ones I love to talk about. So there is the Grizzly and Wolf Grizzly and Wolf Discovery Center in West Yellowstone, and they've rescued grizzly bears and wolves and some otters, and let's see what else. There's some birds of prey. They even have like a chipmunk.
Which was a hit with our kids. They like that more than anything. So, but it was amazing. This was a really cool area because, a really cool place because of the way they do it. So they have all these grizzly bears there, but they bring them out in shifts, and so when they come out, they're ready to be active, and they hide food in the rocks and the logs and stuff like that. So, man, they come out and they play in the water and they hunt for food. A nice area.
I saw a grizzly bear climb a tree.
Yeah.
It was incredible.
Yeah.
And then there was a wolf family. They'd had babies in April, and there was a mom and dad and 4 pups, and it was so fun to watch them interact with each other. It was really, really neat. Not everything was open at the Grizzly and Wolf Discovery Center.
Yep.
But it was still super neat. I would say, like, of all the zoos and places I've ever been, that was like my favorite. I was in awe the whole time, and your ticket is good for 2 days. So, their hours are pretty limited. I think it's like 12 to 6 or 10 to 6. It's not open very late, but you could hit that at some point during the day and go back the next day if you wanted to. The other one I want to talk to you about is Bear World. Bear World is in Rexburg, Idaho, so it's not right next to the park. It's on the way to the park if you're going to the west entrance from Utah, Idaho. And Bear World is a hit with our kids and has been for years. You drive through and you see, there's black bears everywhere.
Well, you actually drive through where the bears are. So the bears will come right up next to your door. They'll just walk right up next to you, which is amazing. The kids are just kind of, they're just fixated on, watching these bears walk right up to you. So that's and then when you get done, you just kind of drive through this little path. You'll actually see elk. You see an albino elk. They have some wolves there, and they have some grizzlies there. Although in our experience, the grizzlies are usually just kind of hanging around. They're not near as active as they were at the other grizzly and wolf encounter. But anyway, when you get done with the drive, then they have a petting zoo with pigs, goats. They have a deer or a few deer that you can pet. They've got chickens.
Although,
they've got a moose.
You don't pet the moose. The moose is kind of...
Yeah, the moose is off a little bit, but And then they have bear cubs that the kids can feed. You have to pay extra money.
Like you can bottle feed them.
Yeah, but the kids can bottle feed these bear cubs. So,
and
really cool area.
They have an amusement park. Now,
Yeah.
I'm not talking Six Flags here.
No.
This is like maybe they have 6 or 7
Little
kiddie rides.
Yeah.
But like you could sit in the middle of the courtyard and let your kids go around and
Yeah.
they're happy as can be, and they have lots of fudge there.
Yeah.
They have like 30 different kinds of fudge, and I love to like get a few squares and cut them into little pieces and share. And so, but that's a little pricey too. Like I was looking at the prices today, it's over 20 for an adult. For a kid, it's, I don't know, maybe around $11 or $12. But you can pay by the carload for up to 7 people, and you can save $1 online if you book your tickets online. You can save $1 per ticket, or the carload's like $100 for 7 people, so it can be a little pricey. So, I think some trips were kind of like, ooh, which one should we do? Like, which is better?
Yeah.
So I would say if you have like kids, Bear World is like hands down. That's what you've got to go do. Bear World is just, it's cool. The kids love videoing the bears as you drive through. I think one was like licking our car one time.
Yeah.
It was wild stuff, and it was real fun. And there's even like a picture of my grandparents when they were 80. They went to Bear World and they loved it too. So it's good for all ages. But the Grizzly and Wolf Discovery Center is such a unique experience. Like, I mean, I was completely fascinated. I could have probably stayed there for 4 or 5 hours just watching those wolves. I thought they were so neat. So they're both awesome, but if you have kids with you, for sure go to the Bear World. Is that?
Yeah. Well, and if you're not coming from the Idaho area, then you might not want to drive an hour or whatever it is from Yellowstone to go to Bear World. But okay, so the next thing is let's see.
Rodeo?
Oh yes, so the rodeo. Last time we went, there is a place called the Wild West. No, sorry, the West Yellowstone Rodeo. That's what it's called, and they do a rodeo every night, and it's really kind of the perfect rodeo. It's just in this small little rodeo grounds, and it only lasts about an hour and a half, so they just get right to it, and it's just like the perfect kind of Wild West or Old West experience. It really is just a fabulous little place to go to. At least this is right up my alley. I mean, it's like a little slice of Americana, and so I loved it. And then that same business also has you can rent horses there and go for a horseback ride. So when we went there, 2 of their employees led us. One kind of leads the way, and the other rides up at the back, and you all kind of ride on the line, and they take you out into the woods and stuff like that for about an hour. We rode horses, and then we went to the rodeo. There's a lot of different horseback riding places around there, so you could look at it, but we really loved our experience. So.
It was really neat. One other tip: get tickets for the rodeo in advance. They do sell out. The rodeo runs from June until August, so get your tickets in advance because there's quite a few people there when we were there, and they do sell out. And then they do have concessions there, but they only take cash, so have cash on you.
Yeah, that was a great way to just break up the Yellowstone driving and walking, part of the trip. So the kids enjoyed that. And then the other thing we did that day was we went rafting down the river. So, if you're coming in from out of town, you probably have to rent or go to one of these places that will take you on a rafting trip.
Well, and if you're not familiar with rafting, you want to go on a chartered thing.
Yeah.
Rivers are dangerous, so you want to know what you're doing. Like go on a rafting excursion, and so yeah. And then
there's a lot of them around there, and that'd be a really good way to. It was a great way to see nature because there's a lot of birds and animals that hang out around the river that you're not going to see roadside. So I mean, they're just up above you. There's big nests. There's animals hanging out. So pretty fun.
Okay, so, and we'll have another video out about all the like outside things to do. Those are just some of our favorites we recommend doing. Okay, so safety. Let's talk about safety real quick.
We have to look at our list here. Okay.
So you're going to see signs all over the park about being bear aware and staying away from the animals. And this is my hot tip for you. Stay away from the bison. Okay, most people have the good sense, or I would hope have the good sense, to stay away from a bear with its claws and things like that. But bison, it's like they look like cows, and they're just laying on the side of the road, and they're everywhere. But these are massive, powerful animals, and they are like, I think they're the number one animal offenders. That
Yeah, I'm sure they are.
they gore people. So
I've seen people get very, very close to elk and to the bears. So
the bears or the bison?
the bears.
Oh, the bears.
And the bison. We have video of a mom and her cub crossing the street, and everybody's just standing there fairly close, because the problem is the mentality is always not that you have to outrun the animal if it comes chasing you, but that you just have to outrun your neighbor, right? So people just get very, very close to these animals. So I always say, if you see people getting really close, bust out your camera in case there's an attack. You can record it and put it on YouTube or something. But I have recorded multiple of these, but none have ever attacked. So
None's ever panned out.
None's ever panned out.
Okay, next is pets in Yellowstone. Okay, this is one of those things that in your mind you're like, I should be able to take my dog or my pet, but it's just not a good idea. I mean, there's wild animals everywhere in Yellowstone, and they have very strict rules about where pets are allowed. I mean, they can't be within 100 feet of the road. They're not allowed on the boardwalks. They can't be left unattended.
Yeah.
I mean, it's basically you're choosing to stay at the campsite with your dog or go see the park. Do you really want to experience Yellowstone from your campsite or hotel room? Because if you bring your pet, it's just not allowed anywhere. And it could get hurt by by a wild animal.
Yeah.
And then the last thing is food storage. Animals are real sensitive to smells. You're going to see signs everywhere about storing your food. Like, don't keep food in your tent. They have bear boxes around for you to store your food in. Store it in your car, or if you're in a hotel, don't worry about it. You're in a hotel.
No.
So, yeah. But I think the biggest risk with the food out is maybe getting a ticket from the ranger. They don't like it when you leave your food out. I think one time we got in trouble for leaving a tablecloth out.
The rangers will set you straight in Yellowstone.
They take safety very seriously.
Do not step off the boardwalks, okay? For safety reasons, but also the ranger's going to get on you. All right, what's next?
Other
Cheryl?
tips?
So I think my big tip, I think we have it on here for driving.
Oh, this is a driving vacation.
Oh, it's a driving vacation. Yeah, you're going to be doing a lot of driving. So, okay, my big tip, here's the thing about Yellowstone. You have to see Yellowstone on Yellowstone's terms, which means there's lots of delays. You'll get in traffic jams, either because the animals are walking out in the way or there's just a lot of traffic. Like, sometimes you'll go up to a geyser basin to park, and there's no parking there. It's just booked. It's full. So you're either waiting in line for people to leave, and you're really just sitting there in your car waiting for a parking spot, or you go on to the next one, and so then if you had like a hardcore plan, then your plan is kind of shot. So it's really a mix, because you have to have a game plan, because it's so big and there's so much driving and so many things to see. You really have to have a game plan, but you also have to be flexible, because like on our last trip, I was driving down the road and I saw 3 swans just floating down the river, and there was a little pull-off there, and I actually wish I had just stopped and gone out there and just enjoyed seeing the swans there, because I've never seen the swans in Yellowstone before, Or there was one time where we saw a pelican hunting for food, and would just kind of float down the river and then fly up and float down the river, and we just hunting. We sat there for like a half hour watching this pelican. And so, like, there's all this drama, there's all this nature drama going on all around you, and if you're not keyed into it, you're going to miss some things. So you need to be flexible enough to stop and see those things, but then you also want to try to have a game plan. So my game plan this last trip was to see 5 waterfalls, 5 geysers go off, and 5 different kinds of wildlife. And so we were checking it off as we went, and the kids were kind of keeping track. It was kind of fun. So we had a game plan, but then we were also flexible about it.
Mm-hmm. And like, with that being said, when you leave in the morning, well, first, okay, let me back up. if you want to avoid crowds, you're going to want to either get in the park real early in the morning, like I'm talking 7:30,
Yeah.
like before 7:30, or go into the park around 2:30 or 3 and stay until the evening. You're gonna hit crowds if you're going in at other times, and so, either be a morning person or a night owl. Pick one or the other. Just if you can adjust your schedule a little bit, do that. And then when you leave your campsite or hotel, just in your mind consider that you're going to be gone like 12 hours, because you just don't know how it's going to go down in the park. Like Matt was saying, if you see animals, if you're waiting for a geyser to go off. So bring food, bring water. And I have a whole thing about the water with COVID. I mean, don't just bring a 20-ounce water bottle for the entire day. I mean, that's just not going to cut it because there's nowhere to fill it up right now. So bring plenty of water, bring plenty of food and snacks. Get like a good book on tape or our audio guide when we put it out. Just some fun music. Just get comfy in your car because you're going to be in there a lot in the next couple of days visiting the park. And so, in your mind, be like, I'm going on a road trip today. Have the snacks, have the water, have the entertainment, and just be ready to go. Also, as far as those roads go, there are plenty of roads in the park that RVs are not allowed on.
No.
So when you see those signs, take it seriously. And if you have a choice, try not to take your RV through the park.
So when she's saying that, so the major loops, are fine. You can take your RVs on the major loops, but there'll be a lot of side roads off the loop, like Firehole Canyon Road, which is where you can go see the waterfall. There's little side roads that'll say no RVs or buses. So, and you probably, you want to take those seriously. First of all, a ranger probably get on your case if they see you, but also they're pretty narrow. So they're usually one-way roads that are pretty narrow. So I wouldn't go down them if you had an RV.
And it's hard to find a spot to park your RV.
Right. Yeah, that can be a little difficult.
There are parking spaces for them, but not enough usually. Like if you're going in September, like we recommended, parking and that stuff will be a little easier. But if you're June, July, August, you're going to be dealing with some crowds. Another one we want to talk about was just the temperature. We've mentioned that before, but dress in layers. It's incredible how you can be freezing cold in the morning and then be roasting 2 hours later. The boardwalks get really hot. So bring your chapstick, your water, just be ready for the change in temperatures. Have your parka ready for the 30-degree weather, but dress in layers, be prepared.
As you can imagine, there's not many trees around the geysers, the hot springs. They don't grow particularly well there. So yeah, these are just kind of open areas that can get pretty hot. Okay, have we covered everything? Is there anything else?
Have you heard enough from us?
We hope it's helpful. Like I said, we're in the middle of really trying to prepare some kind of thoughtful itineraries and audio guide. So maybe next year we'll have that out. But we would like to hear feedback on if we missed anything or if you have any questions.
Or just any suggestions of maybe some things you've done that you've really enjoyed that we've left out.
Yeah. So, and finally, we, I guess, just hope that you have a great trip to Yellowstone.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Take care.